Thank you so much for indulging me with that. I want to tell you a little story about that song, and it's by Garth Brooks. Some of you may have heard of Garth Brooks. Pretty big name, as I understand it. And I want to share this because I think it's so cool. He actually is recorded as saying that of all of his crazy number one hits, and he's got obviously a huge catalog of them, that's his favorite song that he ever recorded. And I don't even think he wrote it. But it's heartfelt, and it tugs at those strings. And there are so many songs about moms, but the reason I chose that one today is because I love that picture that it gives of God holding us just so closely to his heart and just where he created us, keeping us there, and then lovingly sending us into the arms of our mothers on earth, where we will grow and be nurtured and cared for and ultimately led full circle right back into his loving arms. I think if I were to ask all the mothers this morning what that full circle looks like or how best to do it, we'd get a wide variety of answers, but I know the common thread connecting all those answers would absolutely and of course be love. And that's because to love another person is to see the face of God. If any of you guys like musical theater, like I do, you may recognize that phrase, to love another person is to see the face of God. It's a phrase from the finale of Les Miserables, and that's one of my favorites. My love for that musical, and for all musicals, actually, is something that I inherited directly from my mother. She was a huge fan, and she taught us to appreciate all of them far and wide, but one of the ways in which she did that was our family vacations in the summertime. My dad was a teacher, and he had the summers off, so we'd take these long road trips, and they'd be sometimes 12, 16 hours long. And during those trips, to pass the time, we would often listen to entire musical scores from start to finish, multiple musicals, and my mom would narrate along and fill in the blanks of the story, and we'd sing along, and that's how we would pass the time. I'm sure you guys have seen, maybe some of you have, a car like this. The cars, now the minivans that have the TV screens on the back of the headrests where kids can watch a movie, or even multiple kids can watch their own movies. Every time I see those, they're so cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, but every time I see them, I think, oh, I'm so glad those weren't around when I was growing up. And that's because of this treasured memory that I have. I'm sure that my brother and sister and I would have quarreled a lot less in the car, but I would have missed out on, those family sing-alongs, and I wouldn't trade those for anything. So my mom had a very large catalog of musicals, but we, of course, had our favorites. My family's a little dramatic, so we liked, the big dramatic musicals. Les Miserables, of course, we loved Miss Saigon and Phantom of the Opera. Those were like our top three that we would rotate among a few others, but those were like the big ones. And at first, I have to say, I think Les Mis was our favorite because there were swear words in it, which was a really big deal. Thrilled us a lot because we weren't allowed to listen to anything that had swear words in it except that. But as we got older, we clearly appreciated it for more than just that, and it remained at the top of the list and still is. When I was 13, I was turning 13, for my birthday, my parents took me on a date, and at that time, Les Miserables was playing at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago, so they took that opportunity and were like, we have a really exciting birthday gift for you. And I was so excited. They took me to see it, and I'll always remember being, really close to the stage. I was sitting right in between them, both of them holding my hands, and, I was just so excited, and the overture began, and it's huge, and we still joke to this day sometimes, remember that? It blew our hair back, and we're like, here we go! I mean, we were really excited, overly excited to see this show together, and it was beautiful and perfect, and every singer was perfect, and I was just enjoying myself so immensely. And we get to the end of 3 or maybe 4 hours, I don't even know, it goes by like this, and it's just heart-wrenching story and beautiful melodies, and we're holding hands still at the end, and we find ourselves at the culmination of all these beautiful stories, and we hear these words floating out over the auditorium in perfect angelic harmony. To love another person is to see the face of God. And my mom in that moment leans over to me with tears streaming down her face, and she says, Natalie, every time I look at you, I see the face of God. Told you, we're like a dramatic bunch, very emotional people. But it's who we are. This is what we do. And we still tease my mom to this day for her dramatic and emotional effusions of love. But I've got to say, they're effective. I'm 34 years old, standing before you, delineating this entire story in vivid detail in front of a whole congregation on Mother's Day. So obviously, there was an impact there, and it stuck with me. And I'm so grateful for that today. I'm grateful for my mom because, and I tell you the story just to show you an example of how my mom never missed a moment. She seized every moment like that to lean over and whisper in our ear and write something on our heart. And it wasn't just writing on my heart that I was loved. It was also, and more importantly, taking that immediate, intense, raw emotion and associating it directly with the Father. And because she did that, I never felt like God was far away when I was young. I always felt him close. I never had trouble picturing him as a father to me and myself as his child. That's an aspect of God's character that some of us have trouble with. And because of my mom, I never did, and I'm so grateful to her for that. I don't think that she had like a handbook that said that. I don't think she was strategizing, like, how do I seize every moment? I think she was just being herself in those moments. And those jewels and those things that I took away were just a natural byproduct of her speaking from a mother's heart. But to this day, I'm so grateful that she did. And in any case, that phrase, to love another person is to see the face of God, has had a significant effect on how I have perceived God and who he is in my life for years to come after that moment. And I think that at its most basic level, that's because to love another person is to see the face of God, because God is love. And that is maybe one of the most basic ways of understanding him when we are first trying to wrap our minds around how big he is. He is love. He is love, and there is no love apart from him. So that's sort of a simple beginning, but as I grew in my relationship with Christ, and I have studied the Bible and grown with the Lord and gotten little revelations of who he is on a deeper level throughout my life, that idea and that phrase has also gathered deeper levels of meaning and gathered layers on top of it as far as how I can use that to see the world. So in order to kind of unpack that idea a little further and share some of those layers with you, I want to start by taking that phrase and stating it in just a slightly different way. I want to say it like this. God reveals himself in our relationships with one another. When we state it this way, I think, and we use the word relationship instead of love, I think it's more easy to be reminded that love, this blanket term we use for so many things, our husbands and tacos, love looks a lot of different ways. It comes in many forms. So I'd like for you guys right now to just take a moment and picture in your minds, let's just say 2 people who you love more than anything in the whole world. I want you to picture their faces. I want you to say their names in your mind. And these 2 people, even if it's, say, your 2 children, these relationships look nothing alike, I'm sure. Like, you have a very unique relationship with each person. Maybe it's your best friend or your sibling, or, of course, many of us think of our mothers today. But I want to tell you that the uniqueness in those relationships, that's actually the key to seeing God's love in a new way, because God has designed our earthly relationships to be unique and to be different from each other on purpose. And the reason is so that we can use each of them to gain a different level of insight into who he is and how he loves us. They're all unique because we are all unique, and he did this to hold our hands in a way and to sort of help us along, because his love for us as his children is so big. Just the magnitude and the depth and the complexity of it is just incomprehensible. So what he did is he broke it down into these several different kinds of love, kinds of relationships, so that throughout our entire life, as long as we remain in relationship with one another, we will be constantly exposed to a new level of his love and how he feels about us. What a gift that is. I mean, that is just, it's so big and it's so mind-blowing, and yet it's so simple and it's so immediate, just right in front of us. And all we have to do is just look around and see it. And we can see the face of God in every person who we interact with, if we have eyes to see and ears to hear. So I think for me, this idea began to really take shape when my husband Arturo proposed to me in 2012. Because at that time, I was experiencing love in the strongest way I ever had. I was so in love. I was preparing my heart for marriage. And even in my prayer life, I just think it was impossible for me to not stumble on this idea. And at the time, I was reading a lot of Song of Solomon, which thematically goes with a person newly engaged. If you guys don't know that book in our Bible very well, it reflects the love of God as the love between two lovers whose deepest longing is for one another. And I realized through that God longs for us. What's more, in other places in the Bible, we, the church, are referred to as the bride of Christ, and Jesus himself is the bridegroom. And through this, that's even a step further. God is committed to us forever. And this idea was just so big to me. It was so special. And I felt like, wow, this overwhelming love that I feel for my husband. Do you mean to tell me that's how God feels about me? Are you really saying that? That's just a glimpse of how God feels about me? And that was a gift. And just as I felt like I was getting a handle on that, we had our first child. And whoa, motherhood, that is just a whole new ballgame, as many of you can attest. I think, we had our daughter and she was probably less than a month old before I was calling my mom daily, weekly, and just saying things like, how have you made it this far? How have you made it to 3 of us in our 30s without drowning in your own tears? Dramatic side coming out again. But I do know, I cry probably once a day. At least once a day, right? And it's because it's so intense, this experience of just being around them and watching them grow, and I'm just so full of awe and amazement and wonder and happiness and love. It just spills out my eyes. Can't help it. And then we had our son 3 months ago, and I just have no words, guys. It just keeps getting better. I just couldn't imagine it could be any better than it was. I am slightly embarrassed to tell you this morning, but if any of you have multiple children, I hope you resonate with this a little. When I was pregnant with Judah, I was so afraid that I wouldn't have enough love for a second baby, because I just couldn't imagine my heart stretching to be any bigger. But then here he is, and my heart just doubled in size, and it just feels like giant, and wow, there it is. How big is God's heart? You mean to tell me this is how God feels about me? This is just a glimpse of how God feels about me? So that's a lot of layers, and I'm only in my 30s. I'm sure there's a lot more to go. There's plenty more of intense experiences that I'll heap on top of this, and I'll be singing a different tune next year and in 10 years, but I feel like our catchphrase this morning is starting to look less like a catchphrase and more like a novel, an unabridged novel. And that's simply because our experiences are rich. God designed us to not be simple. We are simple, but we're not. And while God is love, purely and simply, he also cannot be contained in one word. He can't be contained in one idea or one phrase. That's why he says simply, I am. And stops there. There is no I am blank. He just is. I am. He's that big. He's that awesome. And there's no way that we can really put a handle on that. But we are created the image of God. And we cannot be reduced to a simple word either. And he designed us to be that way. Our experiences can't be summed up in one word or one idea. And with regard to our message today, neither can our experiences with motherhood, as mothers, or with our own mothers. They can't be summed up in a simple Happy Mother's Day. And we can't acknowledge every single experience. It's just too big. So as I was writing this talk for today, I felt myself kind of coming back to this question that I'll share with you, which is, how do we come together this Sunday as a group, as a communal group, and celebrate something that is so intensely personal, so individual, so intimate, so specific, and yet do it in a way that celebrates our universal shared experience as mothers and as children of the Most High, which really is the bottom line. How do we do that in an appropriate way and acknowledge everyone? And I don't think that there's necessarily a perfect way to do that, but I want to sort of wrap up this talk this morning by giving it a shot, and I'm going to do that in 2 steps. So there's 2 parts that I would like to do. Part 1 is that I'd like to stand before you and acknowledge these vastly different paths and journeys and celebrate each and every one for its joys and its sorrows and all the strengths that lie within them. So I'm going to read this because I don't want to forget anything. Here goes. To those who gave birth this year to their first child, we rejoice with you. To those who lost a child this year, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and maybe wearing the badges of food stains this morning, we appreciate you. To those who have experienced loss through miscarriage, failed adoptions, or running away, we grieve with you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes, prods, tears, and disappointment, we walk with you. Please forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make it harder. To those who are foster moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm and close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have disappointment, heartache, and distance with your children, we sit with you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve along with you. To those who have experienced abuse at the hands of their mothers, we acknowledge your pain. To those who lived through driving tests, medical tests, and the overall test of motherhood, we are better for having you in our midst. To those who have aborted children, we remember them and you on this day. To those who are single and long to be married with children, we grieve with you that life has not turned out the way you'd hoped, but we encourage you that it's not over and encourage you to trust in God. To those who step-parent, we walk with you on these complex paths. To those who envisioned lavishing love on grandchildren, and yet that dream is not to be, we grieve with you. To those who will have emptier nests in the upcoming year, we grieve and rejoice with you. To those who have placed children for adoption, we commend you for your selflessness, and we remember how you hold that child in your heart. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you and we support you. So for these and anything else I may have left unnamed, and if I did, I'm sorry, I'd like to lift up this prayer. May each one of you walk closely with Jesus, praising him in your joys and your sorrows, and allowing him to draw you closer to the Father, step by step, all the days of your life. And that's how I would like to celebrate our unique experiences. But to close, I'd like to do now step 2, which is to offer a perspective of motherhood that transcends those unique experiences and exists beyond circumstance. And to do that, I'm going to leave you with the words of Felicia Rashad, who played one of America's most famous TV moms, Claire Huxtable, on The Cosby Show. I grew up loving her, and she was asked to come and speak at a commencement ceremony for Syracuse University. And the speech that she gave to those graduating students, surprisingly, was that to live the best way that you can in this world is to do so with the heart of a mother. So I'm going to read to you what she said. She said to them, "A mother's heart is brave. A mother's heart is keenly intelligent. A mother's heart is resourceful and quick and skilled in action. A mother's heart is flexible. A mother's heart is sustained and empowered by the purity of its intention, its sole intention, to see the family through, and to encourage each member of the family with its diverse individual personalities, to embrace the family as a whole with love and respect. Unyielding in this effort, the mother's heart sacrifices its own pleasure for the well-being of the family. My great wish for all of you is that you would understand that this takes great effort and sustained and renewed commitment, that you would each come to regard this world and all its inhabitants as your family, and that you would embrace it with a mother's heart." So today, on this Mother's Day and every day, I want to encourage you guys to do the same. I want to encourage you to embrace this world with a mother's heart. I want to encourage you to regard each one of God's precious children as your family, your parents, your children, your brothers and sisters in Christ. And I want to encourage you to never miss a moment, never miss an opportunity to seize those moments of love and seek God's face, because he is there. And because when we do that, when we love fiercely and deeply and unconditionally, we win, we thrive, we grow, and truly we really do see the face of God. So I want to pray with you guys to close today. Let's bow our heads. Lord, thank you so much for who you are. Thank you for being a father to us and for giving us a revelation of that love as parents of our own children. Thank you for all of the mothers today, the spiritual mothers, the biological mothers, the adoptive mothers, stepmothers, mentor mothers. We need them. We appreciate them. Thank you so much for the blessing that they give to us this morning and throughout our lives. And we praise you. We praise your holy name in all that we say and all that we do. And it is in your Son's perfect and holy name that we pray. Amen.